Tonight on Reporting Scotland, an inquiry into the infected blood scandal finds a catalogue of failures and a cover-up by the NHS and successive governments. It finds that patients here were experimented on without their knowledge in a scandal affecting thousands of Scots.
It's hard to think of a more damning sentence that you can place on a hospital, saying that the treatment is utterly unacceptable. And to that extent, as I say, I feel vindicated.
Also tonight, a tribunal finds a rape crisis centre discriminated against one of its staff over her views on gender. It said the Edinburgh charity conducted a heresy hunt against Ros Adams for her belief that service users had the right to know the sex of staff supporting them.
That we should have access to decent housing and decent healthy food. The housing part, we're managing that, but the healthy food one, no.
The community that's been campaigning hard for a supermarket but is still waiting after being promised one 2 years ago.
Coming up in the sport, injury blows for Scotland ahead of Steve Clarke announcing his squad later this week, with both of his favoured right-back options set to miss the Euros. And is this the future of mountain rescue? The flying 5G drones that could be a game changer for emergency searches. Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Monday's programme. A tribunal has found that Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre unlawfully discriminated against an employee who believed sexual assault victims should be able to choose the sex of those supporting them. The centre had denied discriminating against Ros Adams, but the judge found its CEO, a trans woman, appeared to believe Miss Adams was transphobic and conducted what was described as a heresy hunt against her. Well, our correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart has been following this story. David, just talk us through what happened then.
So this is back in 2022. Ros Adams was working at Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre and she was dealing with an abuse survivor who was referred to a non-binary support worker. So that's someone who was born female but at this point didn't identify as either male or female. The support worker had also changed their name to what was described as a male-sounding name. Now, the abuse survivor queried with Ros Adams if their support worker was going to be a man. Ros Adams was unhappy with the amount of detail she was able to give that abuse survivor about that, the amount of detail that management allowed her to pass on, and she questioned this process. Ros Adams was then invited to an investigation meeting regarding potentially transphobic views. A disciplinary process was launched, allegations were upheld, and she later chose to resign. Now, we spoke to Ros Adams today and she explained to us why she felt it was so important to be able to pass on more information about biological sex of support workers.
Sexual violence is about bodies, and sexual violence is perpetrated by 98 to 99% male people. So male-bodied, male people who have been socialised as male, and so we need to respect that when people are traumatised by that, their senses are highly, highly alert to the person in front of them.
So, David, what did the tribunal actually have to say in this case?
Well, in their judgment, they're very critical about what went on at Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre. They found that the investigation should not have been launched, that it was nonsense, in their words, to suggest that any emails sent by Ros Adams were transphobic. The judge said that the disciplinary process used against her was reminiscent of the work of Franz Kafka, the author who was famous for his books about confusing situations, bureaucracy that was difficult to navigate. The judgment also talked about Midro Badra, the CEO of the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre, a trans woman who's not legally changed gender, and it said that she was the invisible hand behind everything that had taken place.
Strong words then. What's the reaction been to the findings?
So we've heard from Rape Crisis Scotland. They're the umbrella body that oversee rape crisis centres like this, and they've said that an independent review has now been commissioned, that they're concerned by some of the evidence that the tribunal heard. In a statement they gave to us, Rape Crisis Scotland said, "We know it's important for some survivors to have a choice over the sex or gender of their worker." And we've also heard from Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre, and they say they fully support the review and are committed to improving continuously. Someone else who's got involved here, J.K. Rowling, the author, well-known activist in this area, she said organisations like Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre are demonstrably prioritising gender ideology over the service they're meant to be providing to extremely vulnerable women. We also went to the Scottish Government for a response because they do fund the centre, and while they said they wouldn't be commenting on any individual tribunals, they did welcome the fact that that review is going to take place.
OK, David, thank you for that. Hundreds of lecturers are taking part in the first of 9 strikes over 3 weeks at colleges throughout Scotland. Members of the EIS, Further Education Lecturers Association, are taking action due to a dispute about a pay rise backdated to 2022. A new 4-year pay claim was submitted last week. Colleges say their offer is worth £5,000 over 3 years, and the union should ballot its members on the deal.
I think students and college lecturers will be disappointed and indeed perplexed that the strike action is set to continue. There's a very fair £5,000 pay offer on the table for the EIS feeler.
The idea that the EIS as a teaching union would put an offer to members which is predicated on job loss is laughable, and the employers know that. But I think if they were able to make assurances about the security of jobs in the sector as part of this deal, or just kind of remove that, I think that would be something.
It's known as the biggest treatment disaster in NHS history. 30,000 people, 3,000 of them in Scotland, infected with HIV and hepatitis C by contaminated blood in the 70s and 80s. Here, hundreds have died. Many more lives have been changed irrevocably. Today, 6 years after a UK public inquiry began, 5 decades since the harm was first done, the final report into what happened. Its conclusions are stark. The disaster could and should have been largely avoided, and doctors, the government and the NHS tried to cover it up. And in Scotland, patients who'd been infected were studied without their knowledge. Late this afternoon, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, formally apologised to the victims and their families. Our health correspondent, Lisa Summers, reports.
Every person here turned to the NHS to save their life, for a blood transfusion after childbirth or after an accident, new treatments for haemophilia or for childhood leukaemia. Instead, their lives were devastated, the blood they received infected with HIV or hepatitis C. Over 2,000 Scottish victims did not survive to see this day, but those who could travel to London would not have missed it. Ewan McDougall died from AIDS at the age of 16. Like his uncle Terry, he was infected by blood products. His mum Kate died without seeing the end of this inquiry, but his dad John made the journey from Glasgow.
It helps with emotion for me. I mean, obviously it doesn't help with Kate or with Ewan or Terry. Obviously, they're gone. But when I read there in the report that the situation at York Hill in those days was utterly unacceptable, that's the expression that's used, utterly unacceptable. It's hard to think of a more damning sentence that you can place on a hospital, saying that the treatment is utterly unacceptable. And to that extent, as I say, I feel vindicated and happy that this day's arrived, but sad.
After the birth of her second child in 1988, Jill Fife was infected with hepatitis C through a blood transfusion. The impact on her health stifled her writing career and her life as a new mother.
For my family, lost childhoods, lost opportunities, and a lot of that was avoidable had people taken responsibility. People who should have taken responsibility, had they taken it a long time ago, a lot of the harm is avoidable. So today, there are a lot of lessons to be learned, but there's also an overwhelming feeling of, I don't know, as though a blanket's been lifted.
The Scottish-born inquiry chair received a hero's welcome as he outlined his findings.
The failure of clinicians to tell people of the risks of infection from blood or blood products, the failure to tell people of the availability of alternative treatments, the failure to tell them they were being tested for HIV or hepatitis C, and sometimes the failure even to tell them, or to tell them promptly, they were wrong, they were unethical.
He looked in detail at the treatment of haemophiliacs in Edinburgh, concluding they were used for AIDS research without their knowledge or consent.
I do solemnly and sincerely.
Under the care of Professor Christopher Ludlam, his evidence was dismissed by Sir Brian, vindicating long-time campaigners. The crowds who came to London to be part of this day and reflect on the findings heard some of what they waited for from government.
Layer upon layer of hurt, endured across decades. This is an apology from the state to every single person impacted by this scandal. It did not have to be this way. It should never have been this way. And on behalf of this and every government stretching back to the 1970s, I am truly sorry.
But campaigners say there must be no more delay in compensation.
My late husband had this mantra. He said, the government know what they've done, they know who they've done it to, and it's up to the government to put it right.
The Scottish Government has also welcomed the findings, pledging to restore faith in the NHS. Meanwhile, for those infected or affected, a chance for decades of wrong to now be put right. Lisa Summers, reporting Scotland, Westminster. Lisa Summers, BBC News.
Well, we can speak to Lisa now. Lisa, as we saw in your report, a momentous day for all those involved and quite overwhelming, actually, for the victims. Perhaps if you can just sum things up.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge range of emotions for those who've travelled from Scotland to London for the publication of this report. It's the end of a very, very long journey because, remember, many didn't survive. People have lived with shame and stigma for decades. And it's such a huge document, it's hard really to take all of it in, but certainly the people that I've been talking to say that they feel vindicated, they feel relief, but actually they just feel gratitude to Sir Brian Langstaff for listening to them and for publishing such a thorough report. That is in sharp contrast, of course, to Scotland's public inquiry. You'll recall that the Penrose inquiry was published in 2015, and victims were hugely disappointed at that. They branded it a whitewash, they burnt copies of it because they were so disappointed. Here they say that they feel very much at the centre, the front and centre of the investigation. They feel that Sir Brian Langstaff has addressed all of the questions they've had over the years, and he has actually concluded that there were delays in telling them of their infections, that the research interests of clinicians were put ahead of the health of patients, and that actually when things started to go very wrong, there was a concerted effort by the NHS and the government to cover it up.
OK, Lisa Summers, our health correspondent in London, thank you. Now, in just over a week's time, low emission zones, also known as LEZs, will be enforced in 3 more Scottish cities. £60 fines will be issued to drivers using vehicles which don't meet minimum emission standards in Dundee, Edinburgh and Aberdeen. They are already in force in Glasgow. And as Louise Cowie has been finding out, the schemes are being met with a mixed response.
Dundee's low emission zone started 2 years ago. But a grace period has been in place to allow people to prepare. That ends next Thursday.
Vehicles that don't meet minimum emission standards will be affected. For example, if you're driving a diesel vehicle registered before September 2015 and enter this area from the 30th of May, you'll be issued with a £60 fine.
LEZs in Edinburgh and Aberdeen will go live on the 1st of June, a year after Glasgow's. With the countdown on, the Transport Secretary is reminding residents and businesses why they're in place.
Low emission zones take place across Europe. There are 320 cities that have them. Dundee, Aberdeen and Edinburgh are joining them. Quality of health and well-being and quality of life are important for people to be attracted to live, work and come and visit our city centres.
Martin Goodfellow runs a bakery chain which has stores across Tayside. He says the LEZ was a factor in the closure of their Dundee city centre branch.
I'm not against the principles of reducing emissions and improving air quality, and I don't think these days anybody is. But I don't believe that this policy is going to do that. I think it is simply going to drive people out of the town centre and therefore increase emissions in the process, and in so doing jeopardised the future of the city centre.
And there's been a mixed reaction from residents in Aberdeen.
I think they'll be OK. Like, anything that helps the environment has got to be a benefit to the city.
I've got an old car that won't pass the test, and it's going to affect me quite a bit.
Not all of us can afford a nice new car that can drive through the low emission zones.
You can find out if your vehicle is compliant or not, and if you might be eligible for support on the LEZ Scotland website. Louise Cowie, reporting Scotland, Dundee.
Now, a local supermarket might feel like a neighbourhood staple, but one community on the outskirts of Glasgow have been campaigning for one for years, and they're still waiting for progress, despite being told a household name store was coming 2 years ago. Castlemilk was promised a new supermarket through more than £3 million worth of funding from Glasgow City Council. Hope Webb reports.
14,000 people live here, but the nearest supermarket is 3 miles away. That's despite 5 years of campaigning to upgrade the local shopping centre. At the forefront has been Anna Stewart's.
It's like a war zone, and the smell in the back part here, as we came through, the smell of dampness is unbelievable. Our human rights say that we should have access to decent housing and decent healthy food. The housing part, we're managing that, but the healthy food one, no.
In 2022, the Scotsman Group, which owns the site, was awarded over £3 million to redevelop it and attract a supermarket. But 2 years on, not much has changed.
Things don't happen overnight. And that's one of the things you find here, that the things you want to do, you can't, you're restricted, and it's usually politics or something else.
Glasgow City Council told us over £450,000 worth of funding has been released. They say environmental work should be starting soon. But BBC Scotland News has spoken to the UK's most popular supermarkets and all said they currently had no plans for the area. The Scotsman Group said it was still committed to the process of attracting a big brand shop. It means Charlie, who has fibromyalgia, is forced to take a bus and a taxi to get her food shopping.
It impacts me a lot because I end up having to buy loads of frozen food, which means most of the week I'm eating chicken goujons, chicken nuggets, these sorts of things, because when I'm working all week and I do a lot in my community, so I'm always busy, and when I go home at night, it's like I've got to just take what's there. I feel like the people of Castlemilk need to be listened to more. That's the issue. We fight so hard for the services in our community because they're important to us, but we also know they're not just important to us, they're important to our future.
The Scotsman Group says it has held talks with supermarket brands previously, but Glasgow City Council says environmental work on the site does not guarantee any will come forward. Hope Webb, reporting Scotland.
We've all probably experienced the inconvenience of having no mobile phone signal, but in emergency situations, like a mountain rescue, it can become dangerous. Trials are underway here testing a flying 5G network, which can create temporary superfast connectivity to help rescuers in their search. Our science and innovation correspondent Laura Goodwin reports.
A sunny day in Scotland's hills can be a glorious thing, a chance to get away from everything. But when things go wrong, a lack of connectivity can become a real problem.
But what if you could fly in a pop-up network to help rescuers find those in need? That's what's being trialled here at Tarfside in Angus. By placing a series of 5G-enabled boxes small enough to be carried by a drone, connectivity can go from non-existent to super fast.
What we've done is we've built a pop-up mobile phone network that's running on a private 5G RAN that we've built, so that's our radios. From this box here, we've probably got signal on all the hillsides around us here, and then from each of these boxes to another one, we can then relay that over into the next valleys.
And how would you see it working? Would the drone fly and drop something like this, or could it continue to fly?
So it could continue to fly and form a network in the sky, but it could also be able to drop the network and form the network itself.
You've got your phone there, you're on the 5G network. I have no signal whatsoever.
Full strength 5G.
Boxes could be dropped at a casualty, but could also help mountain rescue teams to find them. Drones with thermal imaging are increasingly being used by teams to aid their searches, but they say the ability to stream what they see straight back to command base would be hugely beneficial.
We would still be doing the searching, but if anything was questionable, then that could be beamed right back to our control vehicle or to our control base, and we could get more people involved in making a decision, is this something we want to go for, or should we pull back and send a foot team in?
It is not only we're going to provide the network,
but we need to provide a secure network. There are lots of information going to be shared within this network, so we tested and we tried to make sure it is safe and be able to use by the authorized people only.
It's thought technology like this could also have applications at sea and in disaster relief situations when networks go down. Laura Goodwin, reporting Scotland.
OK, let's get tonight's sport now with Lewis, and you have some breaking news.
Yeah, not the type we're hoping for either, Laura. Thanks very much there. Yes, hello. We do start with some bad news for Scotland ahead of the Euros this summer. Assistant coach John Carver has confirmed that Aaron Hickey and Nathan Patterson will both miss the tournament through injury. The duo have been out of action for some time, but there had been some slim hope that Hickey may have recovered to be on the plane to Germany. But now it leaves Steve Clarke without two of his favoured right backs ahead of naming a 28-man squad on Wednesday, which will later be trimmed to 26. Now, after a nail-biting finish to the Scottish Women's Premier League, Celtic have been crowned champions for the first time, clinching the title in the final minute of the final game. It was their rivals Rangers who got off to a flying start and looked to have the title secured with a 4-0 win against Partick Thistle. So, across the city, Celtic knew that only a win would do, and in the 90th minute, striker Amy Gallagher sent the home fans wild and topped off a fantastic end to the season for new manager Alina Sadiku.
What an effort today. Like, obviously we tried to create, we tried to score, and in the end we got it in. So I'm so proud. I think I was running up and down, and then in my head I was like, wait, we need to be ready for 5 more minutes. No, I felt a big relief because you can see the players also going crazy. And I was just like, this is the moment that the vision was during the split, and now they can celebrate.
And you can watch all the highlights from yesterday's games in the SWPL on the BBC Scotland channel at 7 p.m. OK, now to men's football. And St Johnstone are breathing a sigh of relief after securing Premiership safety in dramatic fashion on the last day of the season. Craig Levine's side knew they needed to win at Motherwell yesterday while hoping Ross County would slip up against Aberdeen. And so it proved to be. Adam Sidibe with the vital first-half goal for the Saints. And despite taking the early lead, County couldn't get across the line. Jamie McGrath with the equaliser for the Dons, who ground out the draw, playing with only 10 men for the final 20 minutes. A playoff now awaits the Staggies, but boss Don Cowie is feeling confident that his team can repeat last season's playoff success.
As always, it comes really quick, so it's about us, recovering from a hard week last week. We've had 3 games this week, put a lot of effort into it. And then again, we've got to get ourselves ready. Rafe, very good team. They're going to be feeling good about themselves. Had a really good season and then got through the playoff against Partick. So we're going to have to be at our best again to get through that.
Let's take a look at what it all means for the makeup of the top flight and the Championship next season. Ross County and Livingston, the bottom 2 in the Premiership, and Dundee United and Raith Rovers were the top 2 of the Championship. So with United and Livingston swapping places, it now just leaves the playoff final between Raith, who got past Partick Thistle in the semi-final, and Ross County. The 2 teams meet in the first leg on Thursday with the prize of top flight football to play for. And sticking with the top flight, and Scottish Premiership clubs will consider banning artificial pitches in the top flight from 2026. The SPFL will issue a resolution to be voted on by all 12 Premiership clubs, with 9 votes required for it to pass. During the 23-24 season, it was only Kilmarnock and Livingston with artificial pitches in the top flight. Killie are already planning to return to grass from 2025. Raith, who are in that playoff final I mentioned, have an artificial pitch themselves. And finally, former Celtic and Hibs manager Neil Lennon has been appointed head coach of Romanian top flight side Rapid Bucharest. The 52-year-old, who returns to coaching after an 18-month hiatus, has signed a 2-year deal with the Romanian club until the summer of 2026. And I must mention before it goes well, Laura, Andy Murray in action at the Geneva Open. He has a set down and he's also trailing in the second, so work to do.
We will keep an eye on that one. Thanks you very much, Laura. Lewis. OK, now on tonight's 9, Laura McKeever meets Teddy, a 3-year-old Maltese from Glasgow whose Italian holiday has attracted news coverage around the world.
Yes, his visits to the Colosseum and the Vatican and a ride on a Vespa have made him a bit of a social media sensation. Join us at 9 for all of today's news, sport and weather, and a rundown of Teddy and his owner Catherine's month-long Italian getaway.
Yeah, that's on the BBC Scotland channel later. But now we have Christine with the weather and another beautiful scene there.
Yes, it didn't start that way for all of us, Laura, but it's been a day of increasing amounts of sunshine. However, the weather's turning unsettled for a time.
Don't say it.
The bearer of bad news
Yeah.
as usual. Thank you very much. Good evening to you. Yes, we've had plenty of sunshine across much of the country, but as I say, it's turning unsettled midweek for a couple of days. We have a developing area of low pressure across the near continent. Its associated frontal system is going to bring plenty of rain our way. For the here and now, though, it's a fine end to the day. Plenty of evening sunshine, dry overnight with clear spells. Some areas of mist and low cloud encroaching on eastern coasts and Orkney. Quite a chilly night to come across the northeast under clear skies, 8 to 11 Celsius further west. So to tomorrow, plenty of morning sunshine away from these eastern coastal areas. Some cloud will bubble up though as we go through the day, and we'll see some heavy, possibly thundery showers breaking out. The Northern Isles though, seeing plenty of afternoon sunshine. These heavy, thundery downpours affecting northern and eastern areas, perhaps a few across southern Scotland too. Misty, murky along eastern coasts, making for quite a cool feel with an onshore breeze. Warm in the sunniest spots though across western areas. To tomorrow evening and night, cloud will continue to increase, rather misty, murky conditions and showery outbreaks of rain pushing in from the south. And as I say, a sign of things to come Wednesday and Thursday. A lot of rain in the forecast before things gradually improve again later in the week. Some showery outbreaks of rain initially on Wednesday. It'll become heavier and more persistent as we go through the day, away from western coasts and the Northern Isles. Quite a muggy feel on Wednesday, a high of around 19 Celsius under that cloud and rain. Little by way of improvement on Thursday. The heaviest rain especially affecting northern areas, turning more showery for central and southern parts. A brisk northerly wind making for really quite a cool feel. That's the forecast. Back to you, Laura.
OK, Kirstine, thank you. And that is Reporting Scotland for now. I will have your late news around 10:30 tonight. Join me then if you can. In the meantime, from all of us here, enjoy your evening. Good night.